Hello YouTube, Herps are up here and it's Monday, so it's time for a randomizer. As you can see, I've got Revenant going here. I'm not gonna bother rushing him though because I won't have any form or anything, not a very reasonable build. And unfortunately today's sortie, hi Captain War, today's sortie is on the Plains of Eidolon with augmented armor, so not only is this unlikely to be a successful fight since the enemies are going to be extremely tanky, but it might also be a little more time consuming, and of course that's going to be important for the that's not what the button I wanted to hit. That's going to be very important for the all overreaching YouTube algorithm, you know. But we'll try to hurry up this early discussion. Okay, what do we have here? Yeah, I don't really have much that's going to be very effective at stripping enemy armor. Actually, I'm going to have to rely a lot on my cat here. Now this is my behind. This is my Smeared Kavat I've rolled. As you can see, you can interact with my behind, of course. It's a funny name. But the important thing about it, right, is that there's the armor shredding augment on the cat, and if we want a quick look at that rather than just wasting time. Sharpened Claws is, in my opinion, one of the most useful augments that you can put onto any Kavat ever, because enemies that get shredded by the cat, that get attacked by the cat, will have their armor removed. So the value here of having this Kavat with me is going to be very high on an augmented armor mission. As for the rest of this build, this is my Smeared Kavat. I tend to run with it a little bit more than my Adarza. So this is the Kavat that give us random buffs, including multiple resources and things, and pure orange crits and things. Link health, link armor for survivability, as well as Metapet kit for some health regen on that. Bite and maul for damage, which is important because the cat needs to deal some damage so that Hunter Recovery is able to refill my health at a rapid rate. And then of course Sharpened Claws, like I told you, and the usual Charm and Mischief precepts for the cat. And Animal Instinct, because Animal Instinct's on every companion ever. Now what we've got here, we've got Frost Prime, and I don't know why I wasn't thinking about this as well, because my Frost Prime has, as its primary build, a build that's designed to shred 100% of armor off of enemies. So this is actually going to be very ideal for getting this accomplished. Now, what does it take to shred 100% of armor off of enemies? I'll tell you, 250% power strength of Frost. If you can reach that kind of hefty power strength, the armor reduction on Avalanche will break 100%. Without mods, the base number is 40%, so that's why you need 250 on it. The rest of what I've got going here
well put together
on the build, besides Power Drift, Blind Rage, and Transient Fortitude to get to that point, is I've got a Constitution to negate some of the downside of the reverse duration, since I'm going to be running Fleeting Expertise and Streamline here, to be negating the negative efficiency from Blind Range with a whole bunch of positive efficiency. And Blind Range, and Fleeting Expertise plus Transient Fortitude gets you to 12% duration, right? If I take this, well, if I take that Constitution off and leave on the Transient Fortitude and the Fleeting Expertise, the duration's absolutely disgustingly small. And what you'll notice if that happens is that the duration for the Freeze and Avalanche gets below 1 second, which is just completely useless because it's essentially the same as the duration of the cast animation for freezing the enemies, which means that you can't take advantage of the Avalanche when the duration is that low. You can't shoot the enemies while their armor is off or anything. And then besides that, so we have to have a little bit of extra duration, plus stretch to get the range up so that I can hit a wider radius. Avalanche at its base has only a 15-meter radius, which isn't particularly good. A lot of times my rule of thumb for area of effect abilities in Warframe is typically I want to see if I can get them up near 30 meters. 30 meters just usually is a good radius. It will usually nuke down a whole room full of enemies. This build still only hits 20 meters on Avalanche, but with Xenoric we should be able to spam enough that it can just roam around and hit enemies with that radius. And then, of course, we have to have some survivability mods, so Vitality and Steel Fiber. And because this build is shredding off armor, Rejuvenation is perfectly fine as an aura. You don't really need that corrosive projection there because enemies aren't going to have armor anyway. Now, some other things you can do with Frost, obviously. This build right here, it's still got the Rejuvenation and whatnot, but this is built around Ice Wave Impedance, which is a crowd control augment for his second ability that lets you spam his 2 into a big room and then slow huge amounts of enemies. And then I've also got Overextended and Stretch on here to help increase the area of effects of his Ice Wave to huge amounts. So Ice Wave here, you'll notice that range mods also increase the angle at which the Ice Wave spreads. Not by a huge amount, but even so, having that 60-degree pizza slice that also spreads through a 50-meter radius and keeps enemies from moving for, what is it, roughly 10 seconds? 12 seconds, okay. I think that may scale with duration a bit too, so it'd be closer to 15 with my 120% duration there. And then the last build I've got is just this balanced build based around Icy Avalanche. It's not got as much strength but it's as the other build, but I've got space for the augment there to be able to give myself and my allies around me essentially a Rhino damage blocking shield there, and a little bit more ability duration, which is always good. But that's not the build I'm going to take, because with augmented armor, this build right here is fantastic. And it's also worth noting that with steel fiber and that much power strength on the build, the snow globe that you will generate with a 250% armor shredding frost build is absolutely indestructible. The rest of these weapons, I'm not hugely a fan of. Now, one thing I will note is that my Glaxion actually has a terrifyingly powerful weapon on here, with damage and multi-shot, which I'm stacking, of course, more damage and more multi-shot. And it actually has causes this Glaxion to deal quite a considerable amount of damage. Now, obviously, I've got a spare mod slot here that I haven't been forming into to get all the way to a full build, because the Glaxion, even after the changes to beam weapons, it still is not a very top tier gun. It deals very low base damage per tick, and it has almost no crit chance on it. So you essentially just have to build a weapon that is based around spamming out lots of ammo, wasting lots of ammo, and shredding through enemies with some corrosive stats here, which is why I've got Malignant Forest, High Voltage, and then another dual stat mod. If I was to finish up the build, the last mod would probably just be that Thermite rounds to get the full status chance and potentially reach 100% status. In fact, just for the sake of testing, yeah, this hits 100% status if you throw in another dual stat mod. So with a couple more Forma, this weapon, say another V here so I can slap in the last mod, this would be pretty good. And that's something I should probably take care of within the near future. But anyways, 90% status is still very effective on a weapon that has that much fire rate. 90% status per tick is still a lot. And the combustion beam here is an important augment, I think, for any weapon that's any beam weapon that's just so inherently single target, right? The Glaxion doesn't bounce between enemies. It doesn't have any inherent punch through like the Ignis does. So the combustion beam, I think, makes a lot of sense on a build like this to be able to clear enemies in an area of effects. Now, against the high level stuff that we're going to be facing, it's not that useful, but I'm not going to worry about it. This is my Viper Wraith. Obviously, the Twin Vipers Wraith are a straight up stronger weapon than the single Viper Wraith, but I've got a hold of this thing just for the heck of it. Now, the Vipers, I think, have enough critical chance that you can build around that, and my Twin Vipers Wraith are set up with a crit build. This single Viper is not, because I didn't see the need to really form it into it, but it's still got a decent amount of damage here. Hornet Strike, Auger Pack for some base damage, Barrel Effusion, Lethal Torrent for some multi-shot, and a bit of extra fire rate, which is always going to an automatic weapon. Corrosive damage and status chance to shred some armor off. And then the one nice thing about the Viper, as opposed to the dual Vipers, or Twin Vipers, is that you do have access to the Stinging Truth augment from Arborist of Hexus, which will up the magazine capacity to be larger than what the Twin Vipers would have, but at the cost of taking up one of your mod slots. And that's the number one reason why I feel like the single Vipers are actually just weaker in general, is because you can get them to be a higher capacity weapon, but you have to give up a mod slot to do so you can't stack as much crit damage or anything like that. If I was to put some more Forma into here, I would probably drop the dash polarity out, drop the Auger Pact, and see if I could fit in the Prime Pistol crit mods, the Prime Pistol Game and the Prime Target Cracker. But that would take something like 4 Forma to accomplish, and it just doesn't seem to be worth it when the Twin Vipers are so much of a stronger weapon, you know. A build like this on the Twin Vipers just gets so much more accomplished, but you have to drop the hollow point out for
a new alert has begun.
Bonus
it
capacity
will be marked
augment.
on navigation.
So there's the Viper, that's the weapon I rolled, and finally the Hirudos. Finally, the Hirudos, which are one of the few weapons in the game that I feel does not need a life strike, or if you are in the mood for healing return, a healing return. It's one of the few weapons in the game that doesn't really need that, because the Hirudos already restore quite a bit of health on hit. Now, the amount of health is nothing resembling what you can get with Life Strike. Like the Hirudos will take a couple seconds to restore a couple hundred health, whereas Life Strike will usually restore that much health instantly. So it's worth keeping in mind that the Hirudos are not a particularly strong weapon in terms of burst healing. But if you're already playing a Warframe that's tanky and is going to be it just wants to get some chip healing in to sustain a little bit longer in firefights, the Hirudos will do so passively without draining on your energy pool or requiring you to channel or anything. Plus, you can have the extra mod slot open, which in this case I've got added in a spare volcanic edge. I'm not sure if that's ideal here. Actually, when I'm looking at the weapon, it seems like the other thing you could do here would be something like Gladiator Might for extra crit damage to stack with the Organ Shatter here, since this is a Blood Rush crit build. Speaking of which, Blood Rush and Drifting Contact. So we got combo duration, and as the combo stacks up, the critical chance also stacks up on the weapon. So the base crit's 15. By the time that you were to hit, say, a 100 hit or so combo, the critical chance of this will be breaking 50% up towards 75%. Very nice. Then of course Organ Shatter, because the weapon's base critical damage is very high. Yeah, 3.0 times base critical damage. And some corrosive, a bit of fire, and then of course Prime Fury, Prime Pressure Point, more base damage, and more attack speed. You could obviously go Berserker here instead of Fury if that's your particular mood. The last thing I want to talk about is the stance. Brutal Tide is the one that matches the polarity on this, so there's not really much further options there. So let me go and make sure, and that I've got Xeneric on. I'm pretty sure I do, because it looks like I was just using Nyx before this. Ah, what the heck is that helmet? What could that helmet be? I can't imagine. There's my operator. Yeah, it has to do with that Revenant quest for anyone who was curious. I really just like the look of that mask, but you have to wear it for the quest, so it happens. And yes, the thing about the high power strength frost build is you absolutely should be running this with Xeneric. It doesn't have rage to restore its energy pool, and it's only got 100 and something. Probably in the 130 to 150 energy efficiency range, but no more than that, because reaching 250% power strength is, I think, even if you were to stretch shit and use the Augur Focus or whatever it's called mod and the Intensify and every other power strength mod in the game, I don't think you'll hit 250 without a you won't hit 250 without Blind Rage. I think you would have to be including an energy conversion mod instead to reach that, and that by that point, Volume invested is something like 5 mod slots. Not really viable in the long run. Just not viable in the long run. To be spending that many mods for that much power strength, when you could just be getting there with just Blind Rage and Transient Fortitude. But instead, just take Xeneric, take some power efficiency mods to negate the downside of Blind Rage, and call it good. Always a better build, in my opinion.
They're sending another wave to take out the drone. Stay vigilant.
Now, one thing to note about the Glaxion, right, is that it's not an energy efficient weapon, or an ammo efficient weapon, I should say. It's not an ammo efficient weapon, and neither is the Viper. The Glaxion also has a problem on the Plains of Eidolon, in that it's got a limited range to it. You know, normally on the plains, you want to be going with hit scan weapons that can fire at a range of 100 meters or more. The beam weapons generally aren't nearly as good. Hey, you. Oh, get off this. One of the things I did not think of was going to be my primary enemy was the Eidolons, but I guess it is nighttime. Okay, what do we got up here? And see, here we go. Red health bars, no armor. And because of the corrosive damage and a high status chance of the Glaxion, that does shred armor pretty quickly. So it's not that bad of a roll, actually, for this fight. And perhaps not the weapons I would have chosen, but I think because we have Frost here, this becomes super easy. And enemies that are not getting picked up by... Enemies that are not getting picked up by Avalanche are getting picked up by the cat here, which is very useful. I think next week for the... Yeah, yes, thank you, Liz. I think next week I will go ahead and swap the cats out to the Adarza just for the sake of having a chance to roll that one. But, you know. Yeah, that shreds the armor pretty quickly. The Glaxion is kind of an underrated weapon, in my opinion. I do feel like it's just straight up fails when compared to the crit beam weapons that are out there, stuff like the Synapse and the Amprex, not release. But it is a weapon that is good enough to be a sortie grade weapon, and it is viable. The ribbon mod I have is obviously doing a lot here for my opinion, that viability. That actually goes. Oh no, it's staying outside. I was gonna say that goes through the snow globe, but I guess it would be in an area affected regardless. So yeah, let me reduce the volume there. That is extremely loud in my ears. I don't know if that shows up on OBS, but I don't think I'm taking out that turret anytime soon. Turrets are immune to aspects. That's a bit of an issue when it comes to killing those. Combustion beam got a kill there. Not bad. With enemies that have no armor, Combustion Beam actually is extremely strong. But Combustion Beam is very weak against armored targets because the effect on it does not do anything. And that is out of range of my view, so I may have to swap to the Viper to take that down. It's cutting through it pretty rapidly. The thing about the Vipers, right, is that because they have such an immensely massive fire rate, the Vipers have some of the highest DPS of any weapon in the game, just about. Freezing. Oh, come on. Hit him with the freeze. The commander's partially status immune, as you can see. He's not taking. He's not being frozen in place or being knocked out, so that's pretty difficult. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Vipers. Because the Vipers have such a monstrous fire rate attached to them, they can become some of the highest DPS weapons in the entire game. Same with the Furus weapons. The big downside is, of course, the fact that in doing so, they also are extremely ammo inefficient, and so on long extended missions, they're not that good. But in quick short missions like those on the Plains of Island, they can be fine. Also, I've got a crit buff here off the cats, so I might as well make use of that with my Blood Rush. Because that is going to be dealing red crits in a hurry. When the weapon all it has is critical chance up to 200%. As you can see, it is healing me passively through that fire proc, as long as I'm hitting him. So that's pretty good. 5 more seconds for the crit buff. Chances of me taking out that ship under these conditions are practically low. You almost always need a high corrosive weapon to cut through the massive amount of armor these ships have. And I don't have anything that's going to be very bursty at long ranges for that. And there's the other ability of the Speed Combat, putting out the Loki decoy and going invisible. I actually really do like the Speedus. Don't ask me why. Oh, it gave me the same buff again. That is so convenient. Ouch. Thank goodness Frost is naturally quite tanky. There is a bit of a debate on Frost, right, as to whether you should build something like a Frost Prime with health, or whether you should build him with just high shield, since he does have one of the highest potential shield capacities of any Warframe in the game. So a lot of enemies out of range here. I'm only down below 75% control. But it's scary. The thing about it, right, is that Frost has a base armor of 300, which translates to 50% damage reduction. So his 100 base health translates to effectively 200 health after armor, which becomes better than the 175 shields he has in base. And of course, both of those numbers triple once he's at max level. So it'd be, it'd be roughly 600 effective health instead of 525 effective shields. But you get what I'm saying. And so going for the health and the armor actually still is the kind of thing that helps him a lot when it comes to his survivability, particularly since he can take that rejuvenation to be able to easily replenish his own health. That said, it's very close, and that sort of thing is going to be a personal preference. And if you want to play Frost with all 3 mods for survivability, or something else like Vitality, or Vigor instead of just Vitality, I wouldn't blame you, because he has very high base tankiness, at least for a caster. Obviously, oh dear, not one of those. How do I shoot that down? Also, how bad is the slash block? Yeah, the chances of me being able to shoot down that bolt are very low. I'm gonna have to stick to my snow bolts here. That is inconvenient because the enemies are not getting very close. Maybe if I run over here and put down another one. There we go. Ah, I'm a cat. Perfect. That actually cleared a few of the enemies really rapidly. One nice thing about it, right, is that when you straddle the we straddle the armor off the enemies, they do take a lot of ability damage. Oh dear. For us, it's such a powerful defensive Warframe, you know? All you have to do is just run around and spam the snow globes, and you shouldn't be taking damage. Anything major. He's already has very high base survivability for a caster frame, and has a lot of defensive tools available to him between his heavily crowd control laden kit and his snow gloves, which are just a direct defensive tool. So, for us, is extremely nice. Hey! We have a success! Only 3 runs.
We don't have much time. An enemy drone has crashed in your area. I need you to...
Yes, Lotus, I know that you have more challenges on the planes. That's a bit of a glitch, but who cares? So yeah, the loadout that we have here is, of course, actually pretty fantastic at dealing with armor. And I will say that these are not my favorite weapons by any stretch of the imagination, but the Glaxion does deal a large amount of DPS. Normally, if I was to go into any sort of endless mission with it, I would obviously want to carry some kind of sentinel, something like a carrier, to increase the ammo capacity on it, because it does spam it through its ammo pool quite fast. But the weapon, even on a rather short mission on the Plains of Eidolon, will still be fine. So there you go.
If I may say,
There's my randomizer, and I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Have a great day. Herp to Derp out.